afternoon, everyone. My name is Don Parkinson, and I'm a consultation specialist with Atkins Realis. Today, we are continuing our series of live stream topics as our project moves through consultation round 2 of the environmental assessment phase. The topics we are covering parallel our project activities or are of community importance, so we hope these will help our viewers and listeners better understand the project and provide input along the way. With me today and in many other shows going forward is Jennifer Ashwazage Pereira, my colleague and an Indigenous engagement and traditional knowledge specialist at Atkins Realis. Hi, Jen. How are you today?
Good morning. I'm good. How are you? Actually, it's noon, but
Good, thanks. Yeah. Jennifer is a member of Henvey Inlet First Nation, located on the French River south of Sudbury, Ontario, and works with me on our projects across Canada. So let's get started. Today, we're going to talk about a topic that isn't necessarily an issue now, but undoubtedly will be as the all season road projects in the area begin to be built. The topic is upcoming construction opportunities, and it's really centered around helping to explain some of the employment and other opportunities that would come from the development of the Webequie Supply Road. So we think it's important to discuss these topics and share that discussion with our viewers and listeners, particularly this one, because I think, it's now that the environmental assessment or the impact assessment are nearing nearing the end. I think people start to look forward to the next steps, and part of the next steps is making the project a little bit more real, and that is sort of training and looking at training for employment opportunities to meet some of the employment requirements that this project's going to present to us. So let's get started now with a run through of today's topics. And as usual, we're going to talk a little bit about the project in general by talking about the project background, um, just to get everybody up to sort of the same level when it comes to information about the project. And then we're going to move on to discuss the proposed construction time frame, the tentative one, because of course it's again subject to change. We're going to then start talking about the construction camps, which are major sources, big sources of employment on the project, and talk about and show you where these are located. We'll talk a bit about the typical camp infrastructure and services required, and then we're gonna talk a bit about construction and other jobs available, the number of jobs and timing, and then talk about how we get feedback from you after that. So let's move next to the project location. Just to remind everyone that the project is located about 200 to 250 kilometers. Well, Webequie community itself is about 200 to 250 kilometers from both James Bay and Hudson Bay in northern Ontario. And the Webequie Supply Road is a road that would run from the airport in Webequie southeast to the McFalls Lake or Ring of Fire area. In terms of the purpose of the Webequie Supply Road, three main purposes. The first is to move materials, supplies, and people from the Webequie Airport to the McFalls Lake area. The second is to provide, and again, this is relevant to today's topic, economic and employment, or economic development and employment opportunities to Webequie community members while allowing them to preserve their language and culture and live in and continue to live in their own community as well. And then finally, to provide experience and training opportunities for youth and help encourage them to pursue higher learning or additional skills training through post-secondary education. In terms of the project itself, the planned road is about 107 kilometers in length. As I mentioned, running from the airport in Webequie southeast to the McFalls Lake area, which is really in the heart of what's called the Ring of Fire. 17 of those 107 kilometers sit within the uh, the Webequie First Nation reserve lands. The corridor, like the planning corridor that's being used for this project, the preferred corridor was identified after looking at a series of alternative corridors. And when we say corridor, what we're referring to is like a 2 meter, 2 kilometer wide band of land within which the road would go. So that's sort of the area, the planning area that the team is now working within that preferred corridor. And then the planned cleared area is 35 meters in width. Some other aspects of the project: three major water body crossings would occur. The first being coming from Webequie would be of Winisk Lake, which is about 200 to 250 meter wide span. That would be a very large bridge structure. And then as you move south on the supply road, there's the crossing of Winiscus's Channel, which is about 30 to 40 meters in width. And then finally, at the east end of the project is the Mukatai River crossing just before the road ends, and that is similar to Winiscus's Channel. It's 30 to 50 meters in width. Um, as I always say, an all-season road project is not just an all-season road. It includes temporary and permanent uh, facilities such as aggregate, pit, and rock quarry areas that have all the equipment for processing rock and crushing it into the sizes that are needed, and of course all these areas, these aggregate areas, um, the vehicles, trucks, and equipment have to get to them, so they need access roads, and then those roads cross water courses, so they have water crossings themselves, just like the regular all season road does. And then of course you have construction camps, and there will be 4 construction camps along the route to accommodate the construction crews, um, and then there would be operations and maintenance offices that would be permanent. The construction camps would be temporary, and typically, just going back to the construction camps, these include like the infrastructure associated with them, like a wastewater treatment plant, like a small water treatment plant, and then storage of tanks for storage of drinking water or potable water. So um, there's lots of different facilities at these camps, and then typically associated with these camps, you have storage and laydown yards, and these are where equipment and materials are kept, and these would be temporary, and any equipment, permanent equipment yards would be probably typically associated with the operations and maintenance offices. So that sort of hopefully gets everyone sort of briefed on the project just so they know exactly what it's about. Let's move now to the construction time frame and the camps. Talk a little bit about that. Um, so right now, the construction time frame, based on a study done by a construction planning team. They did a detailed study for us, and it's identified that the project to be built would be built over 5 years. And according to what they put together, that would start in 2028. That may be able to start earlier, depending on lots of other factors. But the most important thing is to understand that it would be probably around 5 years. We always considered it to be 3 to 5 years to build out a project such as this. So what you're seeing on your screen now, it's probably hard to read the details of it, but just I think the most important thing is just to sort of understand how these schedules work. So on the left side, you see a list of all the different tasks associated with the project, and then what you have going across from left to right is time. So it's starting in 2028 and it's going to 2033 or the end of 2032, I guess. And so it just shows the different activities and the time over which that they would they would happen. Just to explain that, and there are a lot of different project activities associated with this. It takes a lot of planning. There's a lot of moving parts to projects like this. They're very complicated. They're almost always never exactly on schedule. They might be early, they might be late, but there's a lot to them, and some tasks associated with the project depend on other tasks to be finished first. So there's a lot of relationships between tasks that you have to keep in mind as well too. And let's move to the next slide. And this slide it just shows the different proposed camp locations. So I believe these have been finalized now. This map is a little bit older, but it shows 4 different locations for camps, and then 2 different alternatives for those camps, alternative locations. So I think these have all been finalized. As I said, the first camp coming out of Webquay actually would be on reserve lands. And again, these are all tentative locations. And then as you move south, there would be other camps spaced pretty equally, I guess, in terms of distance um, along the proposed route. So that would be the distribution of the camps as of right now. And again, these are all planned. Um, Nothing's firm yet, but those are just to give everybody an idea. Those are the approximate locations. So now, Jen, let's move to the area that I think most community members are interested in. And that's the construction and other
The fun
jobs
stuff.
available. Yeah, this is the fun stuff. This is what community members want to hear, um, because there's a lot of employment opportunities available with a project like this. You and your community too, Jen, when you did the wind farm project, you have firsthand experience with these projects and the opportunities that they can provide community members.
Right, with the wind
Sometimes
farm
those are taken
project and
advantage
highway
of, sometimes
construction.
they're not. Yeah, yeah.
That's
Maybe you
right.
can tell us some of your experiences.
Well, we had certainly a lot of job opportunities in highway construction, the road construction on the wind farm, and then general um, turbines going up. So
Assembly?
there's a
Was it
whole
assembly?
assembly. Yeah, there's another word. I just don't feel like right saying it. So uh like in here we have heavy equipment operators, so we had a whole host of those things, and we had training in our community that took place for heavy equipment. In here we see crusher operators, so there's some training that goes into that as well. Surveyors, management, civil technologists, site administrators. What about the civil technologist, Don? Is that something that someone would can get training in community, or is that a little bit more technical?
The technologist role, Jen, would be like typically, I think it's like a 2 to 3 year program at a community college on the technologist side. So
Okay,
that's something that's still achievable, right? If, as
right
long
now,
as you
yeah.
make community members aware of it early enough, right? because then they can make sure they get their grade 12. Then they can, and then with that, they can then get into a college program, right? After that.
Okay. Yeah, so the time to get into some of these positions is actually right now to think about that. And let's see, we got rock truck drivers. Oh, we got a whole host of female rock truck drivers in my community, and that was quite something to see.
Yeah,
And
that's
then
great though.
it is that
That's
was
a,
a lot of
would you say, Jen,
the
that a good
females.
proportion of community members got jobs? Like we're actively working on the project? Like, do you have any
Yes,
idea
I
what
would
kind of
say
numbers?
I don't have the numbers, Don, but I would say to start, anybody who applied for a job got a job. So that was anywhere
Yeah,
from like site maintenance and in those laydown facilities or laydown yards too. You also need people coordinating some of that sort of stuff. We had environmental monitors, we had heavy equipment operators, we had rock truck drivers, as I said earlier, and we had a whole good team from the community that were doing the health and safety for the site. And they were trained
yeah.
kind of on the job training, and then they were dispersed throughout the entire construction site during the wind farm.
Well, you know, the interesting thing is, Jen, is when I was going over the report that was prepared for us, right, for this project, a
Hmm.
lot of these, in fact, I think almost all of these, well, a lot of them, I should say, um, they claimed could be learned on the job, right? Some of these, like
Hmm.
a lot of these, and obviously some of them are really technical, like when you're getting into mechanics and things like that. There's a certain amount of training in that, but you know, I think what they mean is like certain basic tasks associated with those jobs could be learned on the job, like changing the oil on heavy equipment, things like that, right? But again,
Yeah,
it all comes down to making sure community members are aware of the opportunities far enough in advance so that they can go and get the training because the training is available. And the opportunities are there, but if you got to give community members enough time to be able to take advantage of them, right?
that's it. And with the highway inspector and bridge inspector certification programs, that is through the Ministry of Transportation. And so we
Hmm.
had some guys that were doing that were kind of learning on the job. So they had hands on training. Then they would go away for about a week to do a course and take a test and then come back to site and work.
Yeah, that's. And then, as you mentioned before, I think at least one of those trained inspectors ended up leaving
Yeah,
and working
the ministry
for
spooked them.
MPO, right? Yeah, which is a good and bad story, right? Like it's
That's right. It's
but
great for those guys, and it wasn't too great for us because
like that certification again, these are certifications that are, they're meaningful, right? And they allow you to transfer and they provide you with other opportunities, outside of your community, which is great. But yeah, like
yeah, and
health
if
and
that's something
safety.
that you want, and if you want to work close
Yeah,
to
yeah,
home, all
exactly.
those options are right there too.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, it gives community members that flexibility, right? Like if they want to leave, then they can, or it's just. But it's all about timing, right? It's all about making sure that community members are aware of the opportunities, and they're helped in terms of being able to find where training opportunities are available, because there are lots of programs out there. It's just getting access to them and knowing about them, right? And
That's
knowing what
right.
they need training wise and how long it will take to get certified for those different jobs. So lots of construction jobs available. And then the next slide, and this is these are not this is not a small number of jobs at all. But when you get on the camp operations side, these camps are small towns, right? There's a lot going on in them. There's a lot of activity. There's there's the catering side of things, right? So communities, entrepreneurial community members could create catering companies and prepare food for workers at the camps, which could be a really good business over a number of years. So catering is one camp operation, housekeeping, managing just the facility in general. These are not necessarily small facilities, and they need people to sort of manage them in terms of making sure everything's working okay, and then security, right? Making sure everything is secure, um, that the equipment is secure. Uh, Waste management. There's a lot of waste that's created. There's all kinds of facilities like the water treatment facility, the portable water treatment facility. All these things have to be secured. They have to be made sure that they're running properly. So there's a lot of jobs associated with camps.
Yes, and going back to the catering, um, there you can do a food truck, and you can go take that food
Yes.
truck
Yeah.
to the site wherever it's safe to do so, and people can
Yep.
grab their pay for grab their bagged lunches there and their morning coffee. That's something as simple as that, and have in providing those kinds of services. But that's also making me think of something else, though, Don, when you're talking about catering and security and stuff like that. But that's not to say that a raven won't come and steal your sandwich.
Yeah. That's right.
It made me think when we
Yeah.
were on the wind farm, we were at one of the laydown areas, and I don't know what somebody put his sandwich beside him and turned around to go do something, and a raven scooped his sandwich up, and he was flying just slightly above us with this big sandwich hanging out of his beak, and it was pretty funny.
Yeah.
Poor
You
guy,
can have
he
all the
lost
security in the
his
world,
whole
but
life
that may not protect you from the sandwich,
from a
the
raven.
raven sandwich thieves. That's a great story. Oh, that is a good story. Now, monitoring and compliance. Let's talk a little bit about that. We've talked about this in other presentations,
Mhm.
and a big role on. And last week, you and I talked about environmental management plans, right? And one component
I
of that
did.
was the monitoring side of things, right? Making sure that environmental management plan is actually being followed properly. And so you would have environmental monitors ensuring that compliance with the environmental management plans, and part of that is in would what would be baked into that environmental management plan is culturally appropriate uh, activities, right? And
That's right.
acti- to show respect for example, for any any wildlife that's encountered, whether it's dead or alive, just showing proper respect and understanding how to conduct themselves as well too. In a lot of different ways. So there's that cultural awareness side of things, and that's why on a project like this, you would prefer to obviously have community members doing these jobs because they have the insight, they know the land, they know the water, they know the culture, they know what's appropriate, what's inappropriate. So to have community members doing this job is really, really critical, isn't it?
Oh, it's very important, especially
Let's
with
move
the
on now.
we talked a bit last week about, I know, about the environmental management plan, and one of the things that's not, um, I would hope that community members don't think that it's very overwhelming, because it can, as last week we talked about, it comes in bite-sized pieces. So while you're doing your areas, you stick to your area, and then you know what's what over there. You don't have to know the entire plan to be able to do the monitoring
Yep.
process. You'll know the whole plan by the end.
Yeah, yeah, it's a big these are big plans, right? Yeah, yeah, exactly. But there's some key things that monitors can look out for, right? And obvious things, and particularly the kinds of things that do happen from time to time, right? A small oil spill from when from a vehicle or whatever. Sometimes these things happen, and there's certain protocols, or an animal killed by accident, right? An animal gets hit like a snake, for example. I mean, I'm sure you might have had that kind of situation. You might have encountered that on your project in your community, right? With the snakes. I know there's certain times of year when the snakes are out, and I do know on some projects I've worked on, they have to instruct the truck drivers to make sure that they keep their eyes out for that, so that
Hmm.
they're not there aren't any snake kills. But if there are, then how to deal with such a situation, right?
Yeah, how to handle a fatality.
Yeah, and then I mean, did you on your projects did you have? I mean, obviously there's quite a few bears in your area, but did you have, bear monitors or wildlife monitors on the job?
I would say that would have been lumped in with the environmental monitors. However, in the
Okay.
beginning, during the environmental assessment process, we did have, I guess you would call them bear guards. The Anishinaabe would go out with crews out onto the land. So while they did their work, which is very quiet, the bear guards would keep an eye out for the many black bears that lived in our area.
Yes, yes. Okay, we're almost done for today, but let's talk a little bit about types and number of jobs and timing. This last chart that we're going to bring up on the screen. So, as I mentioned, there were 5 construction years, including winter and summer seasons in each of those years. And this chart shows you the different jobs and then the number of people employed at that time. So as you can see, there are the employment levels fluctuate.
Hmm.
There's obviously fewer people working in the winter than in the summer, but the numbers are quite big. When you think about the size of the communities, um, well, of Webequie itself, and the number of employable people, these projects are employing a lot, could theoretically employ a lot of community members when you look at some of the
Hmm.
the peak uh, the peak totals here. Like 114 in the summer,
Yeah,
112 and
look at years
114
two
in the
and
summers
three.
of, yeah, it's a busy, busy time. It's a lot of people. That is a lot of people. So uh, that just sort of gives, I think, this is a useful chart because it gives people an idea of the types of jobs. Look at equipment operators. You're looking at
Hmm.
64 equipment operators in the summer of year three. 62 in the summer of year two. 55 in the winter, so it doesn't even drop off that much in year two. And those are really good jobs that pay really well. So, if you're interested in learning how to operate heavy equipment, there's a lot of opportunities there. As you can see,
Hmm.
that's
And if
the
and if you
biggest
want, you
employer,
could
right?
take the winter off.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah. At least in some seasons, right? Yeah, like it's pretty incredible. Like, and you look at, and I think even those camp staff, those numbers might be low. You probably might need more staff at camps than those numbers. But it's pretty
Probably, there's a lot to
interesting.
do.
There is a lot to do. There's a lot of moving parts, but I hopefully that gives community members a pretty good idea of the opportunities that are out there. And again, the next step is taking this information and translating it into laying it out for community members so they can start to pursue the training, right? The appropriate training
Right, and create their
so
plans. I
that
have a
they're ready to go.
question.
Sure.
Where can people get this information?
So this information was created from a construction plan that was put together for us.
Hmm.
So you mean this information specifically that I presented today,
Yes, so
or you
people
mean
can
more
look at
information
look
about
at.
training?
No, I
This is
think
our main.
about the jobs and then. Hmm.
Yeah, you mean about the jobs, and well, that's something that's got to move ahead next, right? And it's not really part of the environmental assessment per se. Um, but that's the next step, and I know there's movement now on that front to take this kind of information, right? These different jobs that would be needed, as well, and then combining it with the requirements for each of these kind of jobs, the training requirements, right?
Hmm.
And then identify and then cross-referencing that with training programs that are available. Where are they available? So those are sort of the next steps. I think those wheels are in motion on that front. It's not really
Okay.
part of our particular role, but I do know that that's moving ahead, and we'll definitely we can keep in touch with the people that are working on that part of things and make sure that that message is getting out to community members so they know, right? When do I
Hmm.
start getting the training? When can I start getting the training? Where can I get it from? How long will it take? What do I have to do to be able to get that training, right? So that's sort of the next steps. This is just to sort of lay out the opportunities for community members, and then hopefully from here they can start diving in a little bit more deeply and identifying what they need to do next.
Right. This is an exciting time for sure.
It is. It is. It's just the beginning. It's still early days, but I think it's an important time. So, speaking of time, I think we've run out of time, Jen.
And we have.
We have. So that wraps up today's discussion of construction opportunities. We hope it was helpful and encourages you to join us again next week at the same time when we talk about bridges and other water crossing structures. Excuse me. Don't forget to keep in touch with our project team members via the contact information available on our website, supplyroad.ca, miigwech, and we will talk to you again next week.
Ah, bum up,